Hi everyone. Today we did get that lower high setup. This was very much the concern, right? So yesterday we had the sell. We said this was just a pullback until you get that topping pattern. Now we do have what you could argue is a lower high. We didn't eclipse the move from yesterday. Couldn't quite get to the level, hit this trend line multiple times, couldn't get to it. Rejected from there, after hours momentum fading. And this is starting to look like a topping pattern, but let's go ahead and take a look at all of the charts as we head into the end of the week. Do me a quick favor and like and subscribe and watch the video till the end to help out the channel, and let's get started. In news today, this was pretty much driven by Oracle. In my opinion, Oracle had a massive rally, up about 13% on the session. The benchmark was up only 0.38, and I think a lot of that was driven by Oracle. You can see surge 13% after that fourth quarter earnings, so there are just a few outliers there, absolutely massive. And then, of course, on the other hand, you got Boeing down nearly 5% after one of their 787s crashed with 242 passengers on board. Of course, we don't know anything about why that happened, but of course, Boeing is going to take the hit until there is a little bit more certainty around that. But again, really think Oracle's driving it. There were also some threats about more tariffs potentially being put on. So another little flip-flop there. We talked about yesterday how tariffs were not going to be going higher. They were going to extend pauses as long as discussions were happening. But of course, there is still the threat, and Trump did flex that a little here today. Moving over to fear and greed, this did not move at all. 61 here from a 62, very little movement. You can see just a slight move higher there on momentum. Strength, no change. Breadth moving a little bit higher. Interesting. We'll definitely take a look at that later on the charts. Put-call ratio moving back down again. Plenty of room here for this to spike higher, giving markets more room to the downside. Volatility moving a little bit higher here as well. Safe haven demand continues to come down, and junk bonds starting to elevate here a little bit more, showing a little bit of fear, starting to show a little bit of cracks in this kind of soft landing thesis. Moving over to the economic calendar here for the Thursday, you can see continuing jobless claims a little bit higher. Absolutely not what you want. And then you can see continuing jobless claims also a little bit higher. Inflation, again, still dead. No one cares about inflation. That continues to be dead. I think we'll get a rate cut on that soon, probably July at this point. We continue to see really soft inflation numbers, even with higher expectations, even with all of the tariffs, just does not seem to want to move. And now you can see initial jobless claims a little bit higher here, and those continuing claims also not super great. 30-year bond auction, basically in line. Fed balance sheet actually increased a little bit here. Interesting on that. And then tomorrow, just some Michigan data, nothing that's actually going to move markets. Moving over to the charts, looking at the S&Ps here, you can see we did drift higher back towards that 604.54 level. We talked about it yesterday. One down day is not a pattern, but now we have a little bit of a lower high setup like we talked about on the intro. You can see we're headed back to this zone. Couldn't eclipse the high from yesterday after touching that level. Looking at the momentum, basically zero. RSI still divergence from that peak back here mid-May. No movement there. And then looking at the hourly chart, you can see that same kind of setup. High, lower high, rejection from the trend. Does this kind of consolidate for a little bit before we see that bigger breakdown? I think that's absolutely possible. Might need these to catch up, which could take a day or two, maybe even 3 more trading days. Midweek next week, we see these start to catch up, and then you start to see this structure fracture a little bit. But look at the RSI. You got peak RSI back here Tuesday, Wednesday. Similar price action, lower RSI reads here. Came back up into that same zone, showed rejection on the trends. Again, this looks like the start of a topping pattern. Moving over to the Tasty charts here, you can see we did flip back to bullish conditions. We did get above that trailing stop there, 603.06, just for a little bit. And then you can see at the end of the session and in the after hours, we are back below that level. So to me, this looks like a test. You can also see bullish, back to bearish, back to bullish. This looks a little bit more sideways consolidative, waiting for some of these to catch up, and then we'll start to see this pull back, in my opinion. So lower high setup, looking for a little bit more sell. Then moving over here to the NASDAQ, very similar thesis, right to that trend line. This actually looks weaker relative to the SPY charts here. You can see we did get above that level yesterday and the day before, but now we are back below it. Momentum bearish, RSI right at the SMA. This looks even worse here. You can see it's falling even more after hours, down about $1 in the after hours. You can see nice clean retest of that level. I was watching this all session. You can see my alert there. Came right to the level multiple times and then rejected from there. You can see the sell after hours continuing to drift lower. Momentum bearish, RSI looking weak. You can see that nice peak here, lower high setup, RSI at peak levels, lower RSI read, looking for this to sell some more. Again, similar thesis to the SPY charts. This might take a couple of days before we see these EMAs catch up, and then we start to see that structure break down. But either way, I do believe that it will happen. Let's go ahead and extend these out here. Next level, 523.24, and then this next zone of trend lines in here, 520.50 or so. That's where I believe that we are going. Moving over to the Tasty charts here on the Qs, you can see this actually looks a lot weaker. We did not flip back to bullish conditions. We did stay below that trailing stop, 534.39. Got a test of that level, multiple tests, right in line with that trend line area, right in line with the high back here from the 10th, tested that level, and now we are selling off. I think we at least go to that 89 EMA down at 530.91, and then the next level in there, 528.74, is that next level to the downside. If we do get that bigger sell-off, your target for that kind of continuation to that lower low zone would be around this 527 area at that lowest ATR band. Moving over to the Russell and the Dow, these did what we expected, gap down and touch that next level to 1188. You can see we touched that level, could not fill the gap again. So this is definitely a little bit more bearish, looking for the touch of the 9 EMA there at 210.88, and then the next level in here, 208.22, VWAP in there as well. Momentum continues to fade. This looks like a pretty classic high, higher high, looking for at least a low, higher low setup in here, and then we'll wait to see if this is more of a topping pattern. Is this a left shoulder head, right shoulder with plenty of time over the next couple months to form? Who knows? Just have to keep an eye on it for now. And then looking at the Dow actually looked a little bit better here today, up about a quarter, did get above the body of yesterday's candle, but again, fading in the after hours. Momentum slightly bullish, RSI still slightly bullish there. Moving over to the Mag 7 here, this really didn't give us any additional information. You can see basically unchanged from yesterday. Selling just a little there, momentum slightly bearish, RSI slightly bearish. Really what I want to see is at least a move back below the level, 315.04, 21 EMA support there, 311.23. Want to see it come down, touch that level, retest 315, and then get that breakdown. That's what I would like to see, but for now, we really don't have any additional information. We tested the low of this consolidation, and we are still right at that level. Moving over to Apple and Microsoft, you can see Apple basically unchanged as well, up just a quarter, still below the level 199. Every time we've been into this 196 to 199 area, that has been a buying opportunity. I don't really believe that it is in this iteration. You can see high, double top, pullback, low, double bottom. But now you have a high, lower high setup in here. Are we going to break below this structure? Seems likely. Will Apple actually buy it up with their stock buybacks? Absolutely possible as well. And then you can see Microsoft doesn't care at all, just continues to be a straight rocket ship, continuing to new all-time highs. Momentum stepping back to bullish, RSI at a 77.58. You don't see strength that high that often, but just continues to go straight up. Moving over to Tesla and NVIDIA, you can see Tesla selling off here today, down 2 1/4. Touched that zone, rallied up, retested this area like we expected, and now we are rejecting from there. 313.80 is your near-term target. If that breaks through a 193, and then that 55 EMA is there at 293.60. I do believe this is a high, lower high setup. I do believe this is going to come back down, probably retest these lows ultimately around 280. Does this become more of a structure, kind of like this, up and to the right? It's not impossible, but you don't love to see this kind of high, lower high setup. And then you could get a low, lower low potentially. So for now, I would stay out of it. If you look at this a little bit more broadly, you still have a high, lower high in here with a low. Do we come down to this low in here? For me, I would stay bearish on Tesla, at least for now. And then looking at NVIDIA, nice little update here, probably a sympathy play from Oracle, looking for that 149.65 level still, as we have continued to hold above that 140.76 level. Moving over to staples and discretionaries, you can see staples did go higher today and discretionaries did go lower. So that's a little bit of risk off behavior, which is the expectation if we're going to go lower. Momentum bearish, RSI still doing that same move that we talked about yesterday, retest, breakdown, continuation lower, price continuation lower. Still want to see it get below that 200, which is sitting at 209.07, but this is classic movement. Staples holding up, discretionary selling, expecting this to continue lower. Moving over to breadth, sure enough, we did see a slight step higher here on breadth, still hovering kind of in the zone of resistance. 20-day not doing much of anything. We've been in the same range here since mid-May. We are still here now, mid-June. This is right at the 21 EMA, which has been resistance over the last 4 days. Every time we touch it, we have rejected from there. But the momentum's a little bullish. RSI is a little bit bullish. You can see breakthrough. Do we come down, retest continuation? That would be interesting. Really wasn't much of a pullback overall. And then looking at 50-day, still really strong, still back above that 77.46 level. Remember, this is the SPY charts, and I am short the NASDAQ, which looks quite a bit worse, but the SPY seems to be hanging in there, at least for now. Moving over to the dollar did exactly what we thought it was going to. We said how this broke down yesterday below this structure, and then we did get a nice continuation to a lower low. Usually on the dollar and usually on currencies, at least from what I've seen, you get 3 pushes here. So got a first push, second day continuation, looking for a third continuation. Usually the third is not quite as strong as the second, but the level there is 96.85. Do we get to that next level? Momentum bearish, RSI still bearish here on the dollar, and I'm expecting both of these to move lower. When I say both, I mean the dollar and equities, which usually is not a good omen for where we could be going even over the medium term. Moving over to bonds. Bonds did okay on the day. Again, basically unchanged here on JNK, but it continues to slowly drift higher. I think this is going to go. And then I did miss my buy opportunity this morning, but I did put in a buy order for tomorrow morning. So I'm going to buy some more bonds here, definitely some govies. Want to see this go higher, momentum bullish, RSI bullish. I think bonds are set to go a little bit higher, especially with inflation continuing to be very, very low. I do think we'll get that cut, and then that should send bonds higher over the medium term. So we'll see. Right now, bullish on bonds. Then moving over here to the VIX, again, continuing to signal that markets are getting set to go lower. You got that low, lower low. This is kind of your falling wedge style move here, losing that momentum, coming into support, momentum bullish, RSI also bullish, stepping above that SMA. You got the low, higher low setup there, with the clean divergence on price with that low, lower low. So want to see this push. I do believe it's going to do it. So the VIX signaling bearishness. Haven't quite gotten above that 1850 level, but I would suspect that we'll get there tomorrow. Then moving over to my accounts, I did not do anything on the day. I just continued to sit on this position. And obviously it went against me just a little bit, still in an open profit, still down a little bit after hours. So expecting this to go lower tomorrow. As long as this structure doesn't change, we get that high, lower high, continuation lower, maybe just some consolidation first. Then I'll continue to hold this position. But for now, short calls, looking for a move lower. Let me know down in the comments section what you thought of the Oracle earnings. What do you think of more tariff threats? Does that even matter at this point? And is inflation truly dead? Put it down in the comments. Otherwise, like and subscribe if you got any value out of this video. Make sure you hit the bell so you don't miss out on any future episodes. Of course, none of this is financial advice. This is all for entertainment purposes. Good luck in your trading and have a great day.